in the general population, there is about 90% of people who are using their right hand for doing, day-to-day activities. So there is only 10% of left-handed people in the general population, and that proportion is about the same for all civilization, all countries, and it has been shown that it has been very stable across human development. In other words, since the Paleolithic, there is about 10% of human beings who are using their left hand routinely. On the opposite, left-handedness or right-handedness is not very specific to human beings, because we have non-human primates who are using preferentially their left hand or their right hand. But the difference is that in non-human primates, there is about 50-50% of subjects who are using either the left or the right hand. Now, the study we've been conducting is based on the observation that there is also 90% of people who have the left hemisphere dominant for language. This has been established in the beginning by neuropsychologists and neurologists who observed people with aphasia, which is the loss of language following a ischemic problem in the brain. And based on these two observations of a very high prevalence of right-handedness and left hemisphere dominant for language, people have been thinking that the two phenomena were actually bound together. So they had a common origin and maybe a common genetic origin. Now, this article really questions that issue. Is there a statistical relationship between the fact of having the right hand, in other words, the left hemisphere dominant for hand and dominant for language? We have been using a very large database of right-handers and left-handers, which was original in this study, to address this question using functional MRI, which is magnetic resonance imaging, of people when they were doing a language production task. What we observed is that the asymmetry in the brain of the subject when they were doing this task was distributed about the same in left-handers and right-handers, meaning that there is no statistical relationship between the two facts, being a right-hander and having the left hemisphere dominant for language, or being a left-hander and having the left hemisphere dominant for language. They were, however, a very peculiar result. We observed a very small fraction of subjects, let's say less than 10% of left-handers, which means less than 1% in the general population, who actually have their right hemisphere dominant for language, meaning that for this small amount of subject, less than 1% of the population, the right hemisphere is dominant both for language and for and manual activities. And that very small amount of subjects is very interesting in the sense that they are the only subjects when we can really be sure that an hemisphere is dominant both for the language and for the manual activities.